we're going to look at using Soundation to compose our electronic dance music piece. Log into Soundation by going to the website soundation.com and signing in with your Google account and clicking on Studio. I'm going to give you a tour of the studio so you know how to use it, and then you can use it to compose your piece. So in the studio, we've got the workspace in the middle. That's where you're going to put your work, put your samples, arrange them in a way which sounds good. Down the side, you've got your different channels or tracks. Notice there are currently 4 audio channels. The first 4 are audio channels. They are for audio tracks. Then we've got a MIDI channel, which is for MIDI tracks. Then we've got 2 effects channels. Now, you don't need to deal with the effects channels. If you're advanced, you can give it a shot, but for most of us, we won't need to use that. Also, with the MIDI channel, only the MIDI clips will work here. The audio clips won't. So just be mindful of that. And let's have a look at the right side of the screen. This is our sound library. You can click on this library book button to open up the sound library. And this is a library of different samples, different snippets of music that we can use to put together as a piece. All right, so you can see that's a audio sample. Now, so that you can navigate the library well, it's often a good idea to use tags. So choose a genre, for example, drum and bass, so that only those samples will show up. That way, you narrow down the style, and these samples generally will work with each other because they're in the same style. Double click on them to listen to them. And so on. And if you want to use it, you can drag it into your workspace. You want to start with a melodic layer because the break, the first section of the piece, should be melodic. So I'm going to choose this one because that's quite a melodic sample. Now, before I go any further, I've noticed that in each sample, there's a couple of descriptions which will help you work out what they are. Firstly, the file name tells you what sort of sample it is. It's a synth, it's arpeggio, and so on. Some of them will have things like it's a beat or it's a bass line and so on. So that's going to help you design your music. It's also got some keywords like keyboard or a bass, so you know what layer this sample is. It's got the genre, it's got the speed, 175 BPM, and it's got the key C minor. You want to make sure you choose samples that are the same speed so they stay in time. You want to use samples that have the same key C minor so that they stay in tune. So having said that, I'm going to change my project up here to 175 beats per minute by typing that here. That just makes sure that your bar numbers are synced up with the speed of each sample. So this sample is exactly 2 bars long. Now, this is what we've got so far. And it's quite short, so I want it to be looped. To loop it, move your cursor to the top right-hand corner, and this symbol, the looping symbol, will come out. And you can drag, click and drag, and lengthen the sample to your desired length. I'm going to suggest your first section to be about 16 bars long. So I'm going to make that first layer 16 bars. And you can hear it loops. This is a volume bar. You can turn your sample down if you want. And later on, you can even start it quietly and build a crescendo in there so that it gets louder and louder as it progresses. That is not enough. I want a drum and a bass because we are composing in the drum and bass style. So let's put a beat in there. Now I'm going to layer it on a bit later because with electronic dance music, often you start quietly with few layers and then you want to build the tension as the piece progresses and build the intensity. So that's my suggestion, and we'll put a bass line. Let's use this one. And I'll start that on bar 8. So notice that what I've got so far is layered. Some helpful shortcuts are Control C, Control V, allows you to copy and paste. But also you can dive into some of these menus and give it a play as well, because you could do things like add sound effects to your sample to change it up. Anyway, that's the basics of Soundation. So my suggestion is to have a break, which is about 16 bars long. Then the music should change to the build section. And the build section should be very rhythmic, and it should build up to the drop. The drop is really the peak of your piece. It's where all the energy that has been building up all the way through gets released. And then you can do that whole thing again. So all up, we're probably looking at up to 64 bars. You can do the break, build, and drop, and you can repeat that. But of course, when you repeat it, design it in a different way, which is really exciting. I think I've already mentioned that if you want to add more channels than just 3, which you should, you can click on Add Channel, and you can add Audio Channel. You can move these channels around and reorder them. You can color them in. There's all sorts of fun things you can do. I'm just going to quickly go through how to use Midi as well. Notice up here, there are Midi tracks. Okay, I'll just turn off that filter so that these show up. Now, my piece is in C minor, so I'm going to choose ones which are in the key of C. Let's have a listen to some of these. Okay. Alright, we might use this one just for now. So you can hear that these are digital instructions. And you can even edit some of the notes. It's not really the vibe that I'm going for, but you can change the sound. For example, to change it to a super saw synth. Or you can change it to a different type of synth. Each synth is a different synthesized sound. And so on, or just a mono or a simple synth, or harmless kind of stuff. Each of these knobs will do something different. You can try that out. So you can also use MIDI tracks, but remember MIDI tracks have to go on the MIDI channel. So just be mindful of that. Anyway, I hope that gets you started with Soundation. It is a lot of fun, and once you are done with it, you can export your work using this export function. So there you go. Click on export as MP3 and you will get a file that gets exported out. All right. Well, I hope you enjoy this. Looking forward to your Soundation EDM compositions.